Hey there, Wayne DeFrancesco here. Had a few requests for a swing analysis of the six-time major champion and now golf announcer Nick Faldo. I want to remind you to check out my website at waynedefrancesco.com because you can see all these videos and a lot more over there. So let's take a look at Nick's swing. I filmed these at Hazeltine in the PGA Championship. I think it was '92. That's the one Rich Beam won, where I was lucky enough to qualify for that tournament and play in it. So I would sneak around on the range with my camera and a tripod in the practice rounds, and since I was playing in the tournament, nobody could kick me off the range. So I managed to get some nice shots. The shot from the front-on view on the left, I don't think I quite had the exact face-on angle. At least it doesn't appear that way, because the ball looks like it's pretty forward. So, but anyway, let's take a look at Nick's swing. Now, one thing to consider in his career is that after he won the Masters in '96, he pretty much fell off the map, and surprisingly enough, for a guy of his size and fitness, never really played very much after that. Once he fell out of the top, he sort of fell all the way down and pretty much stopped playing. Now there's conjecture that after he saw that he was being outdriven by massive amounts, that when he decided that he would try to hit the ball further, he couldn't really do it, and his game pretty much fell off fairly severely. Now that's just hearsay. I'm not sure if that's true, but there are some things in his swing, and I did play actually a hole with him in a practice round. I caught up with him at this particular tournament, and I will tell you, he's about the biggest guy you'll ever see. Just like a free safety, huge guy, 6'3", 4", 220, perfect condition. Looks like he would hit it about 10 miles, but he was always more about control than he was about speed. So if we watch his swing, he has one of the classic mechanical marvels of a swing, although, you know, like everybody else's swing, when you talk about it, you're going to talk about all the stuff involved in it, not just the general look of it. So with swings like Faldo and Steve Elkington, while they're great swings, when somebody says, oh, that was a perfect swing, they're really leaving a lot of stuff out of the discussion. So there's a lot of things going on here. In the takeaway, the club goes pretty much right up the shaft plane, but the hands are just a fraction above. You can see on the midway point, which is where I choose to draw the second plane line there, you'll see that the shaft, again, perfectly aligned with the plane, which I kind of like. Elbows nice and level, which I also kind of like. If anything, they're right fractionally above. And again, at the top, if you work the plane line up no more than a degree or two off, almost perfect. Wrist angle neutral. But the one thing that I would notice, I mean, I also like the knee movement, very symmetrical, retains his depth in the hip, doesn't add a lot, but still stays back there. His head is right up against the line, and as he goes back, the first thing you'll notice is that his head does bob up. And when we look at his driver swing, we'll see that lift, and I think that's a telling thing in his swing. Now, just as all good players do, he will compress into the ground in the forward swing, and you'll see that the hands make it back again slightly above the shaft plane on the delivery, and then around nicely. In the forward swing, you see his hips pretty much right there in the box. So all in all, great movement. Now the question is, how dynamic is it, and how much is he working on creating clubhead speed? He's hitting an iron shot here, and while some players hit their irons pretty far, it's not a necessity. Irons are for accuracy, and if you hit them far enough, that's okay. But it's really telling when you get to the driver if there's a lack of dynamic and clubhead speed, you're not going to hit the ball as far. Now, when we had wooden drivers and Bellata balls, and he could flight the thing out there and run it down the fairway, not as big of an issue. But in the age of 310 or 20-yard carries, this one isn't going to carry it that far. So if we look at him from the front, now again, the problem here is if I draw this line up, you'll see it looks like I don't quite have the right angle. So, but we can see the general movement of the swing here. Again, grip neutral to semi-strong, nothing crazy. Arms fairly tight in a V. Here, I would prefer to have them a little softer. But as he went up, a slight movement to the right, pretty common. Hips in the box. And then what's real noticeable is nice width, and then in the forward swing, a extra large amount of lateral drive here. Again, something that I like. But it's hard to tell here, but when the hands come into toward impact and only get to the side of the right leg with the shaft getting toward parallel to the ground, that's not particularly late. So what happens as he approaches the ball is he doesn't have a lot of descending angle. Now he's obviously good enough to put the club on the ball every time, but having the wide release like that is going to be possibly detrimental to his ability to create club head speed. But pretty famous for being able to control the ball off the irons. Now one thing is interesting, if you watch his head, you're going to see his eyes are they're still riveted down at the ball, and I've always thought that that was detrimental again to creating speed, because the upper body is fighting the lower as far as the rotation goes, and to have that head and neck drag the shoulders, to me, makes it all slow. And then that classic finish, which you don't see very often, if I draw the line straight up from his belt buckle, one of the few guys where his shoulder and head will be forward of the belt buckle. So nowadays when you look at guys, you'll see that upper body well back, because the hips, when they thrust, are thrusting more upward, and when the arms release for speed and the head releases, the head doesn't move as far forward in the end there. So if we go ahead and look at a driver swing here, you'll note again the problem is the lifting. Now one thing to note about, now that's a pretty big lift there. This was at the Masters probably in 90 or in 02 or 03. But one of the things to remember about Faldo is that he was really the first guy to incorporate the teaching pro as a babysitter, where instead of just seeing him, once every few months for some sort of a tune-up and he would go out and play, Faldo would have Ledbetter with him at all times. And if you listen to him now, it's kind of hard to believe that he can't come up with any more pithy remarks about the golf swing, considering how much knowledge he must have absorbed from Ledbetter. But anyway, having a guy of his ability need to have a teaching pro present all the time, to me, is questionable. But anyway, a super controlled swing, good lines, and I don't mean to be disrespectful of Nick Faldo, obviously a great champion, but again, you can see it if you look at it at normal speed, just the general lack of force. Just looks like he's laying it out there, as opposed to guys that are trying to hit it 320. So anyway, Nick Faldo.